the concern that a lot of people are starting to have kind of raised in their consciousness is the whole concern around food security, food supply, et cetera. And I think there's a number of reasons for that that we're going to explore. We know that some countries in the world are simply just shutting down exports. They're keeping food for their own populations. There's war going on, which has dramatically reduced supply. There's all kind of these motivations to alter access to food for people. One of the common things I think that maybe we just don't pay attention to that much is the effect of natural disasters. And Malva, just recently I was on Netflix and came across a program, a docu-series called Earthstorm. And if you have a chance to watch it, I would recommend it. We started it and my wife walked away. She says, I don't want to watch all that bad news. But it went through and it talked about the effect, and it was quite fascinating, actually, the whole thing, thunderstorms and hurricanes, tornadoes, earthquakes, and tsunamis, and all these kinds of things. Well, and then the debate it's been raging the last while that these storms are getting worse. And, where I live, it might be a winter storm. It doesn't really matter in a sense, but what we want to do is we want to start talking about how to be a little more prepared for natural disasters. I think it's just prudent. And we're not getting into any conspiracy theories or anything like that. It's just simply, natural disasters happen. And are we ready for that? And I think this picture does a good job, just reminiscent of some of the things that we've seen in the news recently and some of the hurricanes in Florida. And of course, then power going down for people. But as I was going through this research of how to prepare, how to develop an emergency food kit, Malva, here's something that I found. Not one single person that I was listening to, reading, et cetera, talking about this was the fact that if you're still home and the power goes out, right, you still have food, right? So they're talking about their emergency kits you got to pick up. And it's true that if there is an emergency where you have to vacate, but right now I'm just talking about the power goes out for whatever reason. Again, where I live, there's a blizzard and the power goes out. In Florida, a hurricane goes through, like close to a friend of mine, power out. But you still have food. And you have food in the fridge and you have food in the freezer. So whether you have a freezer in your refrigerator or you have a freezer in addition to that, Malva, you may know this more than I do. And of course, I'm a newbie to all of this, so it's all revolutionary to me. But when I say that some of that food is going to last, is that just like an obvious thing to you? Why is it that nobody was talking about it?
Because people like to envision natural disasters as 100% catastrophe, and I need to kind of dig out a bunker and make sure that I survive. And yes, I'm not diminishing those that happened, but 90% of the people in the world, again, these are just statistics off the top of my head, whenever there is a natural disaster, as in a power outage or there's a storm and something happens, it's not catastrophic. And like you
Hmm.
mentioned, there is food in the fridge. And then that is under the condition that you generally have food in the fridge. Because when I talk to my girlfriend and she's a single girl living alone, never cooks, like for her, she doesn't have eggs, she doesn't have milk, she doesn't have flour. She's like, I have a takeout menu, okay? So there is food in the fridge. Granted, you always have food in the fridge to feed your family if you have a big family like I. But a lot of people forget about that. That
Yeah,
listen,
yeah.
there's still a lot of food there. And at times, it's almost a situation where you go to the grocery store, you spend a couple of dollars on food, and then you're so exhausted from all that food shopping that you just go buy takeout because obviously you don't have energy now to cook that food that you purchased. So with natural disasters, it might be the same thing that, you're so worried in preparing yourself to purchase unspoiled canned goods and dry pasta and make sure that you have 50 kilos of rice in your home, where you forget, listen, I have a lot of food. It's generally a week's worth of groceries or a week's worth of food for my family. If you really come to think of it, maybe it's not your favorite food. Maybe it's not the one that you
Yeah.
feel like eating right now. Maybe it's just energy that goes into your body and not necessarily fine dining, but it's still food.
Yeah, for sure. Well, it's interesting again, as I was doing my research where nobody was talking about, and I like your idea that most people maybe are thinking of catastrophic events, but yeah, the majority of things that we face are going to be where we have a power outage. And and when we think about it, so if the power goes out, and let's assume that somebody is still able to stay in their home, the power goes out. Let's assume not like your girlfriend, you've got food in the fridge. Let's talk practically about what to do. And that is, you've got time. There's no panic, right? Because roughly the food in your fridge is going to last you 4 hours. And remind me, I have a question about that. And then, so theoretically, 4 hours. And then food in the freezer is going to last for about 48 hours, so 2 days. So if we're going to plan for a 72-hour emergency food kit, we've got the first 2 days covered just by having food in the fridge and food in the freezer. And so really what we're doing is saying, okay, well, preparation is to make up this gap between 48 hours and 72 hours. And these are just theoretical time frames, but at least we're moving forward in this idea of feeling more prepared and feeling more resilient when we face some storms that come our way. So this idea again about the fridge, and here's a practical action step that I want everybody to take. So in preparation for a storm where you're in your home, power goes out and you're concerned about feeding yourself, and to practice, get an idea of how much space you need, and you simply buy the coolers, picnic coolers, and some gel packs, or ice packs, and put the perishable food in the coolers with the ice packs, because then you're going to lengthen the shelf life or the refrigerator life of that food, obviously because you're making it cooler, or you may even be able to freeze some of it. Anyway, so that's going to lengthen the life of the food within your fridge. That's your first step. Start eating what you have in the fridge, move some of that into some of those perishables that you're concerned about, close to 4 hours, into these containers with the ice in, and that's going to lengthen the life of that food. And again, then you've got what you have in your freezer, et cetera, et cetera. So you're going to be good for the first 2 days. And so, Malva, that's this very particular action step that will get people to do in preparation for some of these storms that they may face. So thanks again for joining me this morning, and we'll see you on the next video.